Hello, everyone. My name is Garrett Williams from Tons of Hunt Studios, and welcome to the video on the making of CrowdClicker. Recently, at my school, one of the clubs hosted a game jam. It would be during the weekend, from Friday at 4 to Sunday at 4, so a total of 48 hours, and we could all make a game using whatever engine we want, whatever assets we want, so long as they're royalty free, and we had to design the game around a theme. So the theme of the jam was clutter. So when I first heard the word clutter, I started thinking of like junk drawers, thinking of like messy rooms, thinking about general things about clutter, like the normal stuff, like just stuff everywhere. And so what I normally do with game jams like Ludum Dare is I will look up the definition of the theme, if it's applicable. And so the definition of clutter is a crowd of something untidily, filled with clutter, a collection of objects lying about in an untidy mess. So when I read that, I didn't really think much of it at first. I still thought of like a bunch of boxes everywhere, like everything, like disarranged, like stuff like that. But then when I relooked at the definition, I saw the word crowd, and crowd isn't exactly the definition of clutter, but that idea of crowd got me thinking. So I started thinking of what if I do something around a crowd of people? And so after I started thinking about that, the ball just kind of got rolling, and the idea for Crowd Clicker came about. So essentially, my idea was to make a 2-day game that would have a bunch of people on screen, and then you'd have to find a certain target, a certain one person. And all you have to do is just click them to signal that you found that person, and then it would move on to the next level. Now, the hard part about it would be that there is more than just your target. You are looking in a crowd of people, and each level, more and more people appear on screen. So, the first thing I wanted to focus on was making the actual target mechanic. I wanted to have a target that you're able to click and a target that is able to move. Then I implemented a movement system. So, I put walls on either side of the screen so the target or the bystanders would not go out of bounds, and they basically just move back and forth between those, so they're always moving. Then after I got the target working, I added some bystanders. The bystanders would be the people in the crowd who are not your target and the people you don't want to click. So the movement system is actually exactly the same for all of them. Um, but as you can see, initially their collisions didn't work well together because they all had box gliders on them, and that meant that they couldn't pass through each other. So what I used is a function called ignore physics. Um, Basically, I assign this um, on the bystander objects. So the bystander would ignore collisions with other bystanders, and the bystander would also ignore collisions with the target. So what this allowed me to do is have the bystanders and the target pass through each other. So instead of them just bouncing back and forth against each other, they do the same thing they normally do if there's no objects. They just go kind of in front and behind of each other. And that's what I wanted. So the next thing I did was implement a leveling system. So I didn't want the game just to be one level and you find the target. Even if there was a bunch of bystanders on screen, that'd still be pretty easy. So what I did is each time you found the target, it would move you on to another level, which is essentially just reloading the scene, except it would spawn more bystanders. So on the first level, there would be the target and 2 bystanders. On the second, there'd be 3 bystanders, and so on and so forth. That would mean that as the game progresses, the game would get harder. The next thing I did was implement a timer mechanic. Now, it would still be hard to find the target with a bunch of bystanders on screen, but there's no restriction to how long it takes. So essentially, the game has no lose condition. So what I wanted to do is that there would be a timer. So you'd have, say, 10 seconds to find a target on a level, and if you don't, then you lose. So I implemented a basic timer, and then if the timer reached 0, then the game would be over. Now this in itself would have some challenge, but there's always the option that the player would just spam click everywhere on screen and they would eventually find the target anyway. And that's not something I wanted. I wanted it to be strategic. I wanted the player to actually try to find the target themselves and track it with their mouse. So what I did is instead of just letting the player just randomly click, every time they click, they lose 1 second of time. So if you click on the target, you're fine because you just move on to the next level. But if you click and you miss a target, then you get less time. So you only have a limited number of clicks before you run out of time. I found a good starting time to be 10 seconds, and with each click, you lose 1 second. That would give the players a decent amount of clicks and also a good amount of time to actually find the target. So that was essentially it for the main gameplay. I had an objective the player had, I had a difficulty system, I had a game over system, and it worked pretty well. So the next logical step for me is to work on the art. For the art, I kind of got inspiration from McPixel. I just wanted basic pixel art, kind of these like thin, boxy looking characters. Something that was not only simplistic, but easy for me to do too. So originally I made the characters as a solid sprite, and with the Unity Sprite Renderer, you were able to change the colors of the characters. Um, but since it was a solid sprite, it would make the whole character the same color. So what I ended up doing to make it a little bit cooler is I split the character up into the head, hands, and feet, the body, and the legs, so I could change the color of them individually. I just combined them under one game object. And what I did is every time a bystander would be spawned, I would randomize the color. So each bystander would look a little bit different. Not only did this mean that each bystander was different in each scene, but they would also be different across the levels. So as you can see, not only did I make the bystanders look different from each other, but I also randomized the background color and the ground color, so each level would look different in all different ways. So after that, I got done that, I started doing more visual improvements. I added a different font that kind of looks pixely. I added little animations for whenever the player misses the target, so it kind of just be a little feedback that they missed. And I also implemented some basic menu scenes so the player could restart after they lose. So I used the website BFXR to make a next level sound. So every time the player clicks on the target, it would play that sound and move on to the next level. That was the only sound effect I had. I use a program called Bosca Seoil. It is a very basic music making program, but it does get the job done and you can make some pretty good music out of it. And also for me, I don't know how to make music that well, and just having this simple program to make a simple looping track is very useful for me. And so after that, I just made the music seamless across the scenes, and I added a little bit more polish, and the game was done. So in terms of the competition, I actually won first place. There was 5 other entries besides mine, and mine got first. And so I was really excited to hear that. I thought the other entries were pretty good. Some of them had better looking games, and some of them had more fun mechanics. But I think what set mine apart was that it was very polished. It was maybe a smaller game than the other ones, but it was done well and it was complete. So in terms of the future of CrowdClicker, do I plan on developing it further? I do not. With my last Game Jam game, I polished it up a bit and released it, but this one I don't plan on doing it. The reasons being, I feel like there's not much more to add. I feel like in terms of the mechanics and the fun of the game, there's not much more I could do. The only things I could think about adding would be sort of cosmetic, maybe add more environments, like having bystanders be on the moon or city streets, or like in a farm or something different like that. I also allow the ability to maybe like let the player select what their target looks like. Right now, it's just like this white character, and I think if I could let the player customize it themselves, that would add this more personalized element to it. But again, those are just cosmetic and they don't really add much to the gameplay aside from visual appeal. The other reason why I decided not to continue development is because there's actually another game jam going on right now, the GitHub Game Off, and that is a month-long jam, and I want to spend time working on that. So stay tuned for future live streams and videos about that. So if you guys want to play Crowd Clicker for yourself, there's a link down in the description. You can download it from itch.io. And that is it. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.